A puppy visits its dying mother, but then the unthinkable happens. Left to rot in an abandoned warehouse, a once powerful guard dog takes her last breaths until her trembling pup finds her. But this isn't just a tearful reunion, it's the beginning of something far darker. When a kind-hearted vet assistant stumbles upon the scene, she uncovers a hidden world no one was meant to see. One where silence is enforced and loyalty is punished. As secrets buried beneath chains and concrete start to surface, one question echoes louder than the storm outside. Why were these dogs never meant to survive? And who will stop those who profit from their pain? Your comments and presence here remind me why I tell these stories. If you still believe in the healing strength of love, truth, and quiet courage, then you're the reason this channel exists. Rain hammered against the metal roof of the old warehouse, each drop echoing like tiny bullets in the darkness. Bramble's small paws splashed through puddles as he ran, his matted fur heavy with mud and rainwater. The young German Shepherd puppy's heart pounded in his chest, but he wouldn't stop. Couldn't stop. Not when he was so close. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the broken windows of the warehouse where he'd last seen his mother. The memory pulled him forward, even as his injured leg throbbed with each step. Behind him, the lights of the rundown town grew dimmer, swallowed by sheets of rain and darkness. Bramble squeezed through a gap in the rusty door, his small size, the very thing that had made his handler call him worthless, now working to his advantage. The warehouse air hung thick with the smell of mold and abandonment. But underneath it all, there was another scent, one he would know anywhere. "Mom?" His soft whimper echoed in the vast space. A chain rattled in the darkness. Then came a low growl, weak but protective. Lightning flashed again, and Bramble saw her, Echo, his mother, little more than skin and bones now. She was chained to a support beam, her once proud form reduced to a shadow of itself. Her ribs showed through her fur, and her legs bore the marks of old fights and newer neglect. Bramble approached slowly, his tail low but wagging. Echo's growl faded as recognition dawned in her tired eyes. Her gray muzzle trembled as she caught his scent. "My baby," she whimpered, all fierceness melting away. "My brave little one." Bramble pressed himself against her side, trying to share what little warmth his small body could offer. Echo's fur felt rough and matted under his touch, nothing like the soft coat he remembered from his earliest days. He licked her face, tasting the salt of what might have been tears. The storm raged on outside, but neither mother nor pup noticed anymore. They had found each other again, and for now, that was all that mattered. Hours passed before the warehouse door creaked open again. This time, a beam of flashlight cut through the darkness. Bramble huddled closer to Echo, who immediately tensed, her body shifting to shield her pup despite her weakness. Lena Ridge stepped carefully through the doorway, her scrubs already soaked from the short walk from her car. The veterinary assistant moved the flashlight beam slowly, not wanting to startle any animals that might be seeking shelter from the storm. When the light fell on Echo and Bramble, she froze. "Oh my God," she whispered, her free hand covering her mouth. Echo's growl rumbled deep in her chest, her teeth bared in warning. Even in her weakened state, her maternal instinct burned fierce and strong. Bramble peeked out from behind his mother, his amber eyes reflecting the flashlight's beam. Lena's heart broke at the sight. The older dog's condition was worse than anything she'd seen in her years at the clinic, and she'd seen plenty of neglect cases. The puppy, though smaller than he should be, showed signs of recent care. The contrast told a story that made her stomach turn. "It's okay," she said softly, crouching down to appear less threatening. "I'm not here to hurt you." Echo's growl didn't cease, but her eyes showed more fear than aggression. Lena recognized the look. She'd seen it in too many abused animals that had learned to distrust humans. Making a decision, Lena reached into her pocket and pulled out a small camera. Moving slowly, telegraph her actions, she placed it high on a shelf where it would have a view of most of the warehouse floor. She had borrowed it from her brother, who used it for wildlife photography. Now it would serve a different purpose. "I'll be back," she promised the dogs, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm going to help you. Both of you." As she backed away, Bramble snuggled closer to his mother, offering comfort in the only way he knew how. Echo's growl subsided, but she remained alert, her body curved protectively around her pup. The warehouse fell silent again, save for the steady drumming of rain and the occasional rumble of thunder. In the darkness, mother and son huddled together, sharing warmth and love that transcended their harsh circumstances. Echo's breathing was labored, but her presence remained strong, a shield between her pup and the world that had shown them both so much cruelty. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Lena arrived early at the clinic, her hands shaking slightly as she connected the camera to her computer. Dark circles under her eyes betrayed her sleepless night, worry for the warehouse dogs keeping her awake long after the storm had passed. The footage began playing on her screen. For hours, nothing moved except the occasional flash of lightning through broken windows. Then, just before dawn, voices echoed through the warehouse. Lena turned up the volume. "What a mess," a deep voice growled. "These ones didn't die fast enough." Lena's breath caught in her throat as two figures appeared on screen. The taller one she recognized immediately, Randall Burke, the wealthy businessman whose name was on half the buildings in town. He stood in an expensive suit, looking completely out of place in the decrepit warehouse. "Should we dispose of them now?" his companion asked. Burke shook his head. "Leave them. The cleanup crew will handle it tomorrow. We need to focus on the new batch at the Riverside facility." Lena's hands trembled as she scribbled down notes. The way they talked about living creatures made her stomach turn. She minimized the video when she heard the clinic's front door chime. Throughout her morning shift, Lena used every spare moment to research Burke's properties. Her search revealed a network of security dog training facilities spread across 3 counties. The facilities' websites showed glossy photos of healthy German shepherds in training. But something felt wrong about it all. During her lunch break, Lena approached Dr. Matthews, her supervisor, in his office. "I need to report something," she said, clutching her notes. "I found 2 dogs in the old warehouse on Pine Street. One's critically injured, and I think it's connected to—" "Lena," Matthews cut her off, not looking up from his paperwork. "We've talked about this. We can't investigate every stray you find. Call animal control if you're concerned." "But sir, I have video evidence of—" "That's enough." Matthews finally looked up, his expression stern. "Burke Enterprises is our biggest client. Their canine training program keeps this clinic afloat. Don't go making accusations you can't back up." Lena opened her mouth to argue, but a commotion from the waiting room interrupted them. A local teenager had brought in a dog he'd found limping near the warehouse. It was Bramble. The puppy cowered in the corner of the exam room, his amber eyes wide with fear. But when Lena entered, something changed. He lifted his head, nose twitching as if remembering her scent from the night before. "Hey, little one," she said softly, crouching down. "Remember me?" Bramble's tail gave a tentative wag. When she held out her hand, he crept forward and pressed his head against her palm. The simple trust in that gesture made her eyes well up. Dr. Matthews performed the examination while Lena held Bramble still. The puppy trembled but didn't struggle, keeping his eyes fixed on Lena's face. The exam revealed old bruises, malnutrition, and a partially healed leg injury. "Looks like he was used as a bait dog," Matthews muttered, shaking his head. "Poor thing's lucky to be alive." "He needs his mother," Lena said firmly. "She's still at the warehouse and she's in terrible condition. We need to—" "Lena." Matthews's tone carried a warning. "That warehouse is private property. If there's another dog there, call animal control and let them handle it. But Lena couldn't wait. During her afternoon break, she drove back to the warehouse. Echo lay where she'd left her breathing shallow and labored. When Lena approached, the old dog's lips pulled back in a snarl, her chain rattling as she tried to stand. "Easy, girl," Lena soothed, keeping her distance. "I'm trying to help." Echo's growl didn't cease. Even dying, she remained fierce, too traumatized to trust. Lena knew moving her now would be impossible. She needed help, and more importantly, she needed Echo to trust her first. Back at the clinic, Bramble had been cleaned up and given fresh water and food. When Lena entered his kennel, he pressed against her legs, whimpering softly. "I'll get her out," Lena promised, scratching behind his ears. "I don't know how yet, but I'll find a way to save your mom. You're both going to be safe." Bramble looked up at her with those soulful amber eyes, and Lena felt the weight of her promise settle on her shoulders. Whatever Burke was doing with these dogs, she would expose it. Echo and Bramble deserved justice, and she would make sure they got it. Lena sat in her car outside a modest ranch house on the outskirts of town, double-checking the address she'd found through old police records. Taking a deep breath, she walked up to the front door and knocked. Caleb Horn opened it, his military buzz cut and stern expression unchanged since she'd last seen him 3 years ago at the K-9 training center. Recognition flickered in his eyes. "Lena Ridge," he said, not quite a question. "Still working at Matthews Clinic?" She nodded. "Can we talk? It's about Burke Enterprises." His jaw tightened, but he stepped aside to let her in. The living room was sparse but neat, with framed photos of Caleb in his police uniform alongside his former K-9 partner. A silver badge necklace lay on the coffee table, its surface dulled with age. "I remember when they fired you," Lena said softly, "for reporting the abuse in Burke's training program." "Reporting it?" Caleb gave a bitter laugh. "I had evidence. Photos, medical records, witness statements. Didn't matter. Burke's lawyers buried it all, and the department chose their funding over the truth." He crossed his arms. "What's got you looking into this now?" Lena told him about Echo and Bramble, about the warehouse footage and Burke's cryptic conversation. With each detail, Caleb's expression grew darker. "You're playing with fire," he warned. "Burke's got half the city council in his pocket. He runs retirement programs for police dogs across 3 states. Nobody questions where those dogs go." "That's exactly why I need your help," Lena pressed. "You know the system from the inside. Together we might find proof that can't be buried." Caleb was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing the edge of his old badge. Finally, he nodded. "I've still got some contacts. Let me make some calls." Over the next few days, they dug through public records and adoption papers. Caleb's former colleagues quietly shared what they knew. A pattern emerged. Dozens of working dogs, listed as retired to Burke's facilities, had vanished without trace. "Look at this," Lena said, spreading papers across Caleb's kitchen table. "In the past year alone, 28 dogs were supposedly transferred to Burke's Rehabilitation Center. No record of them after that. No adoptions, no deaths, nothing." "They're not the only ones disappearing," Caleb added grimly. "I found similar gaps at his other facilities. Dogs brought in for advanced training that never come out." A flyer caught Lena's eye. A glossy advertisement for an upcoming training showcase at Burke's main facility. "This could be our chance," she said, "if we attend as potential clients." "It's risky," Caleb warned. "Burke's security is tight and he knows my face." "But he doesn't know mine," Lena pointed out. "I could get inside, maybe find documentation." Her phone buzzed with a text from her coworker. "Strange men asking about warehouse lot, looking for trespassers." Lena's heart raced. They know someone's been watching Echo. Caleb leaned forward, his expression serious. "Burke's got eyes everywhere. If he connects you to this investigation—" "I can't back down," Lena interrupted. "Not with Echo still chained up in that warehouse, not with all those missing dogs." Then we do this smart, Caleb said firmly. I'll reach out to some old contacts, set up surveillance on the warehouse. You focus on getting into that showcase. He picked up his badge necklace, turning it over in his hands. Just be careful. Burke doesn't just silence his critics, he destroys them. Lena nodded, understanding the weight of his warning. But as she looked at the stack of papers before them, each representing a dog that had vanished into Burke's system, she knew they had to continue. Somewhere in all this evidence was the truth that could bring Burke's operation down. They just had to find it before Burke found them. The autumn morning was crisp as Lena and Caleb pulled into Burke's main training facility. The sprawling complex looked pristine from the outside, with its freshly painted walls and manicured lawns. A sign read, Burke Enterprises, Rehabilitation and Training Center, in gleaming gold letters. Remember, Caleb muttered as they walked toward the entrance, we're private security consultants looking for guard dogs. He'd changed his appearance, wearing thick-framed glasses and growing out his usual buzz cut. Lena nodded, clutching her tablet. Her heart pounded as they joined other well-dressed visitors in the facility's bright reception area. The walls were covered with photos of happy dogs and smiling handlers, a perfect facade. A tall man in an expensive suit approached them. Welcome to Burke Enterprises. I'm Randall Burke. His smile didn't reach his cold eyes. Please, follow me to our demonstration area. They were led through spotless corridors to a large indoor arena. Bleachers lined one side, while a chain-link fence enclosed the training space. Other potential buyers filled the seats, chattering excitedly. Our rehabilitation program transforms troubled dogs into elite security assets, Burke announced proudly. Today's demonstration will show you the results. The first few demonstrations seemed normal enough. Basic obedience, agility courses. But then the mood shifted. Two handlers brought out a muscular German shepherd, its eyes wild with fear and rage. This one was too aggressive for regular service, Burke explained. Watch how we've channeled that aggression. What followed made Lena's stomach turn. The handlers released another dog, and the two animals were forced to fight. The crowd gasped and cheered as the dogs tore at each other, while Burke calmly explained his training techniques. Lena's hands shook as she pretended to take notes. Beside her, Caleb's jaw was clenched tight. She could see him discreetly recording everything on his phone, hidden in his jacket pocket. The key is breaking their spirit first, Burke continued. Once they learn true fear, they'll do anything to avoid punishment. A movement caught Lena's eye. One of the handlers was staring at Caleb, his face showing recognition. He whispered something to Burke, whose expression darkened. Time to go, Caleb whispered urgently. They tried to leave casually, but as they reached the corridor, shouts erupted behind them. The sound of dogs barking and chains rattling filled the air. Release them! Burke's voice commanded. Lena's heart nearly stopped as she heard paws scratching against concrete. They ran, their footsteps echoing through the hallways. Behind them, dogs snarled and barked. This way! Caleb grabbed her arm, pulling her through a side door. They emerged into a parking lot and sprinted to their car. The sounds of pursuit faded as they peeled out of the lot. Miles down the road, Lena finally caught her breath. Did you get it? The footage? Caleb nodded grimly, pulling out his phone. Everything. The fights, Burke's explanation of his methods, all of it. His hands were shaking slightly as he gripped the steering wheel. I've seen a lot in my years on the force, but this... Now you understand why we have to stop him, Lena said quietly. I'm all in, Caleb agreed. Those dogs, they're not just being trained, they're being tortured. Back at her clinic that evening, Lena found comfort in checking on Bramble. The small German shepherd's physical wounds were healing, his limp was less pronounced, and his fur was growing back, glossy and thick. But it was the change in his eyes that moved her most. Where there had once been only fear, she now saw trust. "You're safe now," she whispered, scratching behind his ears. Bramble leaned into her touch, his tail wagging slightly. "We're going to help your mom too, and all the others." She and Caleb spent hours organizing their evidence. Photos of the facility, audio recordings of Burke's explanations, video of the forced fights. It wasn't enough to bring Burke down yet, but it was a start. "We'll need more," Caleb said, reviewing their findings. "Financial records, proof of what happens to the dogs that disappear, and we'll need to move fast. Burke knows we're onto him now." Lena looked at the footage again, thinking of Echo still chained in that warehouse, of all the other dogs suffering in Burke's facilities. The image of those dogs fighting played in her mind, their pain masked as training. "Whatever it takes," she said firmly. "We're not backing down now." The retaliation came swiftly. Just 3 days after the training facility incident, Lena arrived at work to find 2 police officers waiting in the clinic's lobby. Her boss, Dr. Martinez, stood nearby with a troubled expression. "Miss Ridge." One officer stepped forward. "We have a complaint filed against you by Randall Burke for harassment and trespassing." Lena's hands trembled as she read the legal documents they handed her. The accusations were ridiculous, claiming she had stalked Burke's properties and threatened his employees. But his lawyer had crafted them masterfully, twisting her investigation into something sinister. "And there's more," Dr. Martinez said quietly. "Mr. Burke's legal team contacted our board. They're claiming you've been providing unauthorized treatment and falsifying records." He wouldn't meet her eyes. "I have to suspend you pending investigation. I'm sorry." Before Lena could protest, animal control officers burst through the door. "We have orders to seize a German Shepherd puppy," one announced, brandishing more papers. "The dog was reportedly stolen from Mr. Burke's facility." "No!" Lena's cry echoed through the clinic. "Bramble was abandoned. He was abused. You can't take him back there." But the officers were already heading toward the recovery kennels. Bramble, hearing the commotion, began to whimper. When they reached for him, he tried to squeeze himself into the corner of his cage, trembling. "Please," Lena begged, tears streaming down her face. "He'll die if you send him back." The officers ignored her pleas. They muzzled Bramble and dragged him out, his nails scraping against the floor as he struggled. His terrified eyes met Lena's one last time before they loaded him into their van. Devastated, Lena drove straight to the warehouse where Echo had been chained. But the building was empty. No trace remained of the injured mother dog. Only broken chains and scattered straw showed where she had been. That evening, police and animal control raided her clinic, confiscating records and computers. They claimed to be investigating animal welfare violations, but Lena knew Burke was behind it. He was systematically destroying her credibility and taking away everything she cared about. Lena sat in her dark apartment, surrounded by scattered case notes and photos. Her phone kept buzzing with messages from concerned coworkers and angry board members. She ignored them all. What was the point? Burke had won. He had too much power, too many connections. She had lost everything, her job, her reputation, and worst of all, she had failed to protect Bramble and Echo. A knock at her door startled her. It was Caleb, looking concerned but determined. "I heard what happened," he said, stepping inside. "Burke's playing hardball." "It's over," Lena whispered, her voice hollow. "We can't fight him. He's too strong." "That's exactly what he wants you to think." Caleb sat down beside her, spreading out some papers. "Look at this. Every move Burke makes leaves a trail. The harassment charges? They show he's scared. The raid on your clinic? Desperate. He's reacting, which means we're close to something." Lena shook her head. "But Bramble? Echo ... We'll find them," Caleb insisted. "Burke's network isn't perfect. Every transfer, every facility, every fake document, they all leave traces. We just have to follow them." As if in response to his words, Lena's phone buzzed with a news alert. She almost ignored it, but the headline caught her eye. "Guard dog escapes during transfer. Her heart leaped as she read further. The description matched Bramble perfectly. A young German shepherd, seized in a custody dispute, had somehow slipped away from his handler during a late-night transfer between facilities. He had vanished into the darkness, leaving the handler cursing in his wake. See? Caleb smiled slightly. Even the smallest fighter can surprise them. Bramble's not giving up, and neither should you. Lena stared at the article, something stirring in her chest. Maybe Caleb was right. Burke's very efforts to silence her proved that he was vulnerable. And somewhere out there, a brave little dog was refusing to submit to his cruelty. She wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. "Okay," she said, her voice stronger. "Show me those trails you mentioned. Where do we start?" The scratching at her apartment door came just after midnight. Lena, who had fallen asleep on her couch, surrounded by papers, jolted awake at the sound. Through the door came a familiar whimper that made her heart stop. "Bramble?" She rushed to open it, and there he stood, muddy, limping, but alive. His amber eyes looked up at her with desperate intensity. "Oh, sweetheart." Lena dropped to her knees, carefully checking him over. His paw was bleeding, and new scratches marked his thin body, but his spirit remained unbroken. He wouldn't let her treat him, though. Instead, he kept pulling at her sleeve, whining urgently. "Let me call Caleb," she said, reaching for her phone. "You need help." Bramble barked sharply, a sound she had never heard from him before. His message was clear. There was no time to wait. 20 minutes later, Caleb's truck pulled up outside. "This better be good," he grumbled, then stopped short at the sight of Bramble. "Well, I'll be damned." Bramble limped to Caleb's truck and scratched at the door. Lena grabbed a first aid kit and climbed in. "He wants us to follow him somewhere." They drove slowly through the darkness, Bramble sitting tensely in Lena's lap. He would bark or whine to direct them, leading them down forgotten back roads and past abandoned buildings. The route seemed random until Lena recognized a familiar turn. "The warehouse," she whispered. "He's taking us back to Echo." Caleb parked a block away, killing the lights. "Could be watched," he warned, pulling out a flashlight. They followed Bramble through a gap in the fence. Instead of heading to the main entrance, he led them to a partially collapsed loading dock. Beneath the rotting boards was a narrow tunnel, probably an old drainage system. "You've got to be kidding me," Caleb muttered, but Bramble had already disappeared inside. The tunnel was tight and damp, forcing them to crawl on hands and knees. Lena's scrubs were soaked through, but she kept going, following the sound of Bramble's movement ahead. After what felt like forever, they emerged into the warehouse's basement. Bramble's pace quickened. He led them through a maze of old machinery to a corner where wooden pallets were stacked against the wall. Behind them, barely visible in the beam of Caleb's flashlight, lay Echo. "She's alive!" Lena rushed forward. The mother dog was even thinner than before, but her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. When Bramble pressed against her side, her tail thumped weakly against the floor. "Burke's people must have moved her down here when they cleared out," Caleb said, scanning the area. "But why keep her alive?" Bramble answered by pawing at the floorboards near Echo's head. Caleb shone his light closer, revealing that one board was slightly loose. Together they pried it up and found a waterproof case hidden in the crawl space beneath. "Look at this." Caleb opened the case carefully. Inside were stacks of papers, photos, and several USB drives. Training schedules, transfer records, payment logs. His eyes widened as he flipped through them. These aren't just about the dogs. There are photos of meetings with police chiefs, bank statements, written agreements. Burke's insurance policy, Lena realized, examining a particularly damning photo of Burke with several uniformed officers at what was clearly a dogfighting event. He kept evidence of everyone involved in case they ever turned on him. That's why they couldn't just kill Echo. They needed to find this first. And Bramble led us right to it. Caleb looked at the small dog with newfound respect. Smart Boy knew exactly what he was doing. Lena was already checking Echo's vital signs. She needs immediate medical attention. But if we take her to a clinic, Burke will know, Caleb finished, and this evidence will disappear forever. He studied the documents again. We need to go public, all of it, at once. Too big to cover up. Too many people implicated to risk retaliation. I know someone at the Tribune, Lena said, stroking Echo's head gently. She's been trying to investigate Burke for months, but could never get proof. With this, she gestured at the case. A noise upstairs made them all freeze. Bramble's ears perked up, and Echo tried to lift her head. Time to go, Caleb whispered, carefully repacking the case. Back way we came. Lena hesitated, looking at Echo. We can't leave her. We won't. Caleb handed her the case and bent down to carefully lift Echo. The mother dog was so light that he could carry her easily. Lead the way, Bramble. One more time. The small shepherd limped ahead of them, guiding them back through the tunnel to safety and toward the chance to finally expose the truth. Are you sure about this? Caleb asked, watching Lena dial the number for Channel 8 News. They sat in his truck outside the veterinary clinic where she worked, Echo and Bramble safely hidden at a temporary shelter. People need to see this with their own eyes, Lena said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. No edited footage, no carefully worded press releases, just the raw truth. The news desk receptionist answered, and Lena took a deep breath. Hi, I'm calling about a potential story. It's about a remarkable dog rescue, a puppy who saved his mother and exposed something much bigger. She paused, listening. Yes, we have both dogs. And yes, we can prove everything. 20 minutes later, she hung up. They're sending Sarah Chen and a camera crew in an hour. They think it's just a heartwarming piece about loyal pets. Until they see what's really happening, Caleb nodded grimly. Burke's people usually clear out the worst cases before inspections. They won't be expecting cameras today. They drove to Burke's main facility, a sprawling compound advertised as the Second Chance Rehabilitation Center. The news van was already waiting when they arrived. Sarah Chen, a petite reporter in a crisp blazer, greeted them with professional warmth. So, where are these amazing dogs? She asked, gesturing for her cameraman to start rolling. They're safe, Lena assured her. But first, we need to show you where they came from, where hundreds of other dogs are still trapped. Sarah's smile faltered at Lena's serious tone. I thought this was a rescue story? It is, Caleb said, flashing his old K9 unit badge. Just not the kind you were expecting. They led the news crew through the facility's front gate. At first glance, everything looked normal. Clean kennels, fresh water bowls, professional signage about rehabilitation and training. But as they moved deeper into the compound, the facade crumbled. The camera captured everything. Rows of fighting dogs in tiny cages, their faces scarred and bodies emaciated, training areas with blood-stained floors, dogs who cowered or lunged aggressively, broken by systematic abuse. Oh my God, Sarah whispered, her professional demeanor cracking as they passed a German shepherd with fresh wounds. How is this legal? It's not, Lena said firmly, but Burke has friends in high places. He takes in retired military and police dogs, claims he's rehabilitating them. Instead, he turns them into fighters or breeding stock, the ones who won't fight. She swallowed hard. They disappear. The cameraman zoomed in on chains, shock collars, and training equipment designed to encourage aggression. Sarah's questions became more pointed, more urgent. When they reached the isolation kennels, where the most aggressive dogs were kept, she turned to face the camera directly. We're live at Second Chance Rehabilitation Center, where what we're discovering is far from rehabilitation. This facility, owned by prominent security contractor Randall Burke, appears to be a front for organized dogfighting and systematic animal abuse. Lena touched her earpiece. "They're ready," she said softly to Caleb. On cue, a van pulled up to the gate. The side door slid open, revealing Echo on a soft blanket, Bramble pressed protectively against her side. Sarah's voice caught as she narrated the scene. "This is Echo, a former guard dog who was forced to fight. When she refused, she was left to die. And this is her son, Bramble, who never stopped trying to save her." The camera focused on the two dogs. Despite her weakness, Echo's eyes were clear and alert. Bramble gently licked her face, his own battle scars visible in the morning light. The contrast between their obvious love and the violent facility behind them was devastating. "These dogs," Lena stepped forward, her voice strong despite her tears, "represent hundreds of others who suffered and died here. Echo protected Bramble until she couldn't anymore. Bramble came back for her, led us to evidence that proves everything. They never gave up on each other. We can't give up on the others still trapped in places like this." Sarah turned back to the camera, her professional mask completely gone. Channel 8 News has obtained documents and photographs linking this facility to organized crime, police corruption, and animal trafficking across 3 states. We'll be broadcasting a full investigative report tonight at 6 o'clock. For now, live from Second Chance Rehabilitation Center, this is Sarah Chen. The red light on the camera blinked off. Sarah wiped her eyes. "We're running this on repeat, every hour. How soon can you get us those documents?" "They're already with your station," Caleb said quietly, "along with footage from inside the fighting rings." In the van, Bramble curled closer to Echo, both dogs watching the humans with careful hope. Lena knelt beside them, gently stroking their heads. "It's over," she whispered. "You're both safe now. And thanks to you, so many others will be too." Behind them, police sirens began to wail in the distance, growing louder by the second. The camera was still rolling when the black SUV screeched into the parking lot. Randall Burke emerged from the lead vehicle, his tailored suit wrinkled and his face twisted with rage. Behind him, 4 police cruisers pulled up, lights flashing. "Cut the cameras! This is private property!" Burke's voice boomed across the lot. He strode toward them, flanked by officers whose badges gleamed in the morning sun. Sarah Chen stood her ground, motioning for her cameraman to keep filming. "We're live, Mr. Burke. Care to comment on the conditions we've found in your facility?" "This is a legitimate rehabilitation center," Burke snarled, pulling papers from his jacket. "And you're all trespassing. Officers, I have a warrant here to remove these people and reclaim any animals they've stolen." Lena's heart pounded as she moved to stand between Burke and the van, where Echo and Bramble waited. Caleb stepped forward, his stance protective. "That warrant's as fake as your rehabilitation program," Caleb said, his voice carrying clearly for the cameras. "Just like the documents you used to seize these dogs illegally." Burke's composed mask cracked. He nodded to the officers behind him. "Remove them! All of them!" Everything happened at once. 2 officers grabbed Sarah Chen, trying to take her microphone. The cameraman backed away, still filming as 3 more police moved toward Lena and Caleb. Burke headed straight for the van. "You can't touch those dogs!" Lena shouted, but one of the officers seized her arm, yanking her aside. Caleb reacted instantly. He shoved the officer away from Lena, sending the man stumbling backward. "Don't touch her!" A baton swung. Caleb didn't dodge in time. The crack of impact against his shoulder echoed through the lot. He dropped to one knee, face contorted in pain. "Caleb!" Lena tried to reach him, but hands held her back. The van doors were still open. Burke reached for Bramble, who cowered against his mother. Echo, weak as she was, raised her head and growled, a sound full of maternal fury. "Shut that mutt up," Burke ordered. One of his men drew his weapon. "No!" Lena screamed. She broke free, running toward the van. Everything seemed to slow down, the officer's gun leveled at Echo. Bramble whimpered. Echo gathered her remaining strength and lunged forward, putting herself between the threat and her puppy. The gunshot cracked across the parking lot. Echo fell without a sound. Blood spread across her gray-flecked fur. Bramble's howl of anguish pierced the morning air. The cameraman caught it all: the smoking gun, Echo's crumpled form, Burke's cold smile, and Lena's tears as she finally reached the van. "You monster!" Sarah Chen's voice shook with rage. Her microphone had been taken, but she didn't need it anymore. "That was live! Everyone saw what you just did!" Burke's smile faltered as he looked at the camera, still rolling, still broadcasting. His phone began to ring. Then another officer's phone rang. And another. Lena cradled Echo's head in her lap, her hands pressing against the wound. The old dog's breath came in shallow gasps, but her eyes remained fixed on Bramble, who pressed his nose against her face. "We need a veterinary emergency transport," Caleb shouted, fighting through his pain to stand. "Now!" More sirens approached, different ones this time. State police vehicles pulled into the lot, followed by animal control vans and a mobile veterinary unit. Burke's pet officers began to back away. "Randall Burke," a state police captain stepped forward, warrant in hand. "You're under arrest for animal cruelty, fraud, and conspiracy." Burke's face had gone pale. "You can't. I have protection." "Not anymore," the captain said, nodding toward the camera. "The governor just ordered a full investigation. Your friends can't help you now." As Burke was cuffed and led away, the mobile vet team rushed to Echo. They worked quickly, stabilizing her for transport. Bramble refused to leave her side, even when they lifted her onto a stretcher. "She's lost a lot of blood," one vet tech told Lena quietly. "But the bullet missed her vital organs. We'll do everything we can." Lena nodded, tears streaming down her face. She looked at Caleb, who was being examined by paramedics. "Go with Echo," he told her. "I'll handle things here." Sarah Chen approached, her blazer dusty but her eyes bright with purpose. "This story isn't over. The footage is everywhere. Social media, national news. People are demanding action." "Good," Lena said, climbing into the transport vehicle beside Echo's stretcher. Bramble settled at her feet, his eyes never leaving his mother. "Because we have plenty more evidence to share." As they pulled away, Lena could see more news vans arriving, more police, more animal welfare officials. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages and calls. The truth was finally coming to light, but at such a terrible cost. She stroked Echo's fur, careful to avoid the bandages. "Stay with us," she whispered. "Please stay with us. You've done so much. You've been so brave. Just a little longer." Echo's tail thumped weakly against the stretcher. Even now, even in pain, she was trying to comfort them. Bramble whined softly, and Lena felt her heart break all over again. The transport raced toward the emergency veterinary hospital, sirens wailing, while behind them, the evidence they'd fought so hard to expose played on screens across the country. Echo's shooting had become the spark that ignited a firestorm of public outrage. Burke's empire was crumbling, but Lena could only pray it hadn't cost them everything they'd fought to protect. The morning after the shooting, news helicopters circled over Burke's facility like hungry vultures. Police cruisers and evidence vans clogged the parking lot. Inside, investigators in blue jackets marked FBI methodically documented every cage, every blood stain, every piece of training equipment. Detective Sandra Martinez, who had been assigned to lead the local investigation, stood in front of the warehouse, watching teams carry out boxes of records. Her face showed the strain of someone who hadn't slept. "We've only scratched the surface," she said to her partner. "Burke's operation spans at least 3 states." Inside the main office, federal agents were discovering the true scope of Burke's empire. Computer forensics teams recovered deleted files showing hundreds of dogs cycled through the facilities. Financial records revealed payments to local officials, veterinarians, and even animal control officers who had helped maintain the facade. At police headquarters, Randall Burke sat in an interrogation room, his expensive suit wrinkled from a night in holding. His lawyer demanded his release, citing his standing in the community. But the evidence was overwhelming. Security footage from multiple facilities, bank records, witness statements, and most damaging of all, the viral video of Echo's shooting, which had now been viewed more than 10 million times. "Mr. Burke," Detective Martinez said, spreading photographs across the table. "We have documented proof of animal abuse, illegal gambling, bribery of public officials, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Would you like to make a statement?" Burke's carefully maintained facade finally cracked. "Those dogs were property," he spat. "Legal assets to be trained and disposed of as needed. You have no idea how many powerful people relied on my services." "That's enough," his lawyer interrupted. But Burke's words had already confirmed what they suspected. His operation reached into high places. At the emergency veterinary hospital, Lena sat beside Echo's bed in the intensive care unit. The German Shepherd's chest rose and fell steadily, monitored by beeping machines. Bramble lay pressed against her side, his head resting gently on her paw. He hadn't left her since she came out of surgery. "The bullets missed her vital organs," Dr. Thompson explained, checking Echo's vitals. "She's stable, but the next 48 hours are critical. She's fighting hard, though." Lena stroked Echo's graying muzzle. "She's always been a fighter. She had to be, to survive what Burke did to her." Caleb appeared in the doorway, his temple still bandaged. "You need to see this," he said, holding up his phone. On the screen, a news anchor was reporting live. "In a stunning development, federal authorities have taken custody of Randall Burke, the security contractor accused of running an extensive dogfighting operation. Sources say the investigation has expanded to include allegations of corruption involving local law enforcement and government officials. Multiple arrests are expected in the coming days." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "It's really happening. They're finally being held accountable." Later that afternoon, Lena sat across from her lawyer in a downtown office, reviewing the formal complaint against her former clinic and supervisor. The document detailed how they had ignored her reports of abuse, assisted in Burke's cover-up, and wrongfully terminated her employment. "Your documentation is excellent," her lawyer said, adjusting her glasses. "The clinic's involvement in concealing Mr. Burke's activities makes them legally vulnerable, and with the current public sentiment, they'll be eager to settle." "I don't want money," Lena insisted. "I want legal authority to oversee the rehabilitation of the rescued dogs. Many of them will need extensive care and training before they can be safely rehomed." "We'll make that a condition of any settlement," her lawyer assured her. "Your experience and dedication make you the perfect advocate for these animals." At the courthouse, Caleb provided his testimony to the grand jury. He described his own experience trying to expose animal abuse as a canine officer, and how the system had protected Burke for years. "It wasn't just the dogs he abused," Caleb testified. "Burke corrupted the entire system meant to protect them. He turned rehabilitation centers into torture chambers. He bought silence with campaign contributions and consulting contracts. And when anyone tried to speak up, they were discredited or threatened into silence. The media coverage was relentless. Sarah Chen's initial broadcast had opened the floodgates. Other reporters dug deeper, uncovering similar operations in other cities. Animal welfare organizations offered support and resources. Volunteers showed up at the seized facilities, ready to help care for the rescued dogs. Back at the veterinary hospital, Echo showed small signs of improvement. Her eyes tracked movement now. She managed to lift her head when Lena spoke to her. Bramble remained her constant companion, leaving her side only briefly when nature called. "You're doing so well," Lena whispered, scratching behind Echo's ears. "Burke can never hurt another dog again. You and Bramble helped make that happen." Dr. Thompson entered with fresh bandages. "Her latest blood work is encouraging," she said. "The infection risk is lower, and her vital signs are stronger. She's not out of danger yet, but I'm cautiously optimistic." Lena's phone buzzed with a text from her lawyer. The clinic had received their complaint and wanted to negotiate. They were offering full reinstatement, back pay, and, most importantly, agreement to her demands regarding the rescued dogs. "See that, Echo?" Lena showed the phone to the recovering dog. "We're going to help all the dogs Burke hurt. Give them the second chance they deserve. The real kind, not the fake one he promised." Bramble wagged his tail softly, as if he understood. He gentle licked his mother's face, his unwavering loyalty a testament to the bond Burke had tried and failed to break. Outside the hospital room, the world continued to react to Burke's exposure. News crews reported on developments, social media campaigns demanded justice, lawmakers promised reform. But inside that quiet room, watched over by her son and the woman who had fought to save her, Echo rested and healed, finally free from the shadow of cruelty that had darkened so much of her life. 3 months after Burke's arrest, autumn painted the countryside in warm colors. At Echo's Voice, the newly established sanctuary for rescued dogs, leaves scattered across freshly built kennels and play yards. The transformation of the old Peterson farm into a safe haven had been a labor of love, funded by the settlement money and countless community donations. Echo stood carefully in the morning sunlight, her steps slow but steady. Though her coat still bore the scars of her past, it now gleamed with health, brushed daily by loving hands. She watched a group of younger dogs playing in the main yard, her amber eyes bright with contentment. Lena approached, carrying Echo's morning medications wrapped in cheese. "Looking strong today, sweet girl," she said, scratching behind Echo's ears. The German shepherd leaned into her touch, a far cry from the terrified, aggressive dog they'd found in Burke's warehouse. Inside the main building, formerly a barn, Bramble waited patiently beside a nervous 8-year-old girl. She was there to testify against her abusive father, and Bramble's presence helped calm her fears about facing him in court. The little dog's gentle demeanor and soulful eyes had a way of reaching even the most traumatized children. "He knows just what they need," Caleb observed, watching from the doorway. He'd traded his old K-9 officer uniform for more casual attire, but the badge-shaped pendant still hung around his neck, a reminder of why they fought so hard for change. "It's amazing how naturally he took to therapy work," Lena agreed. "The same sensitivity that helped him survive now helps others heal." The sanctuary had become more than just a safe space for rescued dogs. It served as a bridge between wounded animals and wounded humans, each helping the other find strength and trust again. Local courts regularly requested Bramble's presence for children testifying in abuse cases. Domestic violence shelters brought residents to work with the gentler dogs, finding peace in their unconditional acceptance. Caleb's security expertise had proved invaluable. He'd designed protocols to protect both the animals and the people who came to heal alongside them. Camera systems, secure fencing, and careful screening processes ensured nothing like Burke's operation could ever happen here. "The state inspector's coming today," Lena mentioned, reviewing charts on her tablet. "Our first official review since getting licensed." "We're more than ready," Caleb assured her. "Every dog here is properly documented, receiving appropriate care, and either in rehabilitation or already cleared for adoption." The sanctuary's main office displayed framed newspaper articles about Burke's conviction. He'd received 20 years in federal prison, and his network of corruption had been thoroughly dismantled. More importantly, his case had sparked nationwide reforms in animal welfare oversight. Later that afternoon, Bramble finished his therapy session and trotted out to find Echo. She lay in her favorite spot under an old oak tree, watching the sanctuary's daily activities with maternal pride. Her son curled up beside her, their fur touching just as it had on that stormy night when he'd first found her again. Lena and Caleb walked the property's perimeter, discussing plans for expansion. The sanctuary had already reached capacity, with requests for placement coming in weekly. Local law enforcement, now properly vetted and reformed, regularly sought their expertise in animal abuse cases. "Remember when you told me I was crazy to take on Burke?" Lena asked, smiling at Caleb. He laughed, shaking his head. "I remember telling you it was dangerous. Never said you were crazy." His hand found hers as they walked, their shared mission having grown into something deeper. The setting sun painted the sanctuary in golden light. Near the main gate, a new sign read Echo's Voice, where healing begins, with a silhouette of a mother dog and pup. Below it, smaller text stated, "In honor of those who couldn't speak, and those who refused to stay silent." They paused at the oak tree, where Echo and Bramble rested. The mother and son had become symbols of everything the sanctuary stood for: survival, loyalty, and the power of second chances. Echo's gray muzzle rested contentedly on her paws, while Bramble kept his usual protective vigil. "Hard to believe how far we've come," Caleb mused, watching the pair. "And how far we still have to go," Lena added, but her voice held hope rather than worry. Together they walked toward the sunset, their shadows stretching long across the sanctuary grounds. Behind them, Echo and Bramble dozed peacefully, finally home in a place where every dog's voice could be heard, and every story of survival celebrated. The sanctuary's evening routine began around them: medication times, dinner preparations, final checks on the recovering animals. But for this moment, Lena and Caleb simply walked, united by all they'd lost and found, all they'd risked and gained, and their shared promise to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Bramble lifted his head briefly to watch them go, then settled back against his mother's warm side. His journey from frightened, abused puppy to healing helper had come full circle. In helping others find their courage, he'd become living proof that even the deepest wounds could heal with enough love and time. Thank you for watching. Stories like this remind us who we are. If something touched your heart, go ahead and subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow with another story that just might stay with you.